Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to make some small log cabins to use as pockets in a journal. I have started using handmade paper and done some drawings to know where to start painting. I'm going to use watercolor and I'm painting this in brownish grayish colors. I'm doing several layers to get it more like 3D and a bit more like it's really look. So bear with me. You can just use whatever color you have. Maybe you have some watercolor pens, or distress ink is always a good option to use. I'm using a lot of water to make it flow on the paper. Try to avoid hard edges in the color. While it's still damp, I'm putting in some gray lines to mark where the logs are placed. This way the color is floating into the other one and it looks more natural. We will use the same colors but with less water in when we do the next layer. So this is just layer number 1. Takes a bit of time to make them, but I think it's worth the effort when you see the result later on. So then it's time for layer number 2, and it's the same color, brown and black, but with less water. And I'm just going over the log pattern horizontal to follow the logs, leaving a bit of white space to give it some dimensions, and doing the same on all 4 of the small houses. Never mind if it goes with different colors, and that's just natural to see that it's different colors on the logs. So just put on the color and don't be afraid to play. The next step will be to do some doors for the houses. And I'm doing the same thing here, just using brown and black and make it looks as natural as I can. To make it look like wood, I'm going to do the same thing as for the logs. I'm going to do some stripes so that it looks like it's wood on the doors. And I'm doing the same thing here. I'm going with my brush the same way as the log will, or the wood will go. So it looks like it's natural and like the wood really is placed onto the doors. It will look a bit funny if you do the brush strokes the other way when we are going to do it as some logs. On this one I decided to have a little window, so I'm just taking a piece of paper and taking off a bit of the color. I still want to paint because I want the shadows on the window, so I'm not leaving it, but I will quickly take a damp piece of paper and dry it off. Making different shades, some is lighter and some is darker. You can do this in different layers too. You more layers, you more natural it will look. So put as much time you can on these log paintings if you want it to look natural. I'm still a bit in the fantasy world of houses, so I'm not so keen on having them totally natural and real looking. We are still playing and it's important to have fun. So play with your colors and do them as you like in your own way, and that will be perfect. So it's time for the next layer, and now I'm just putting on a darker layer where I think it's needed, leaving some white space where I can to give it the feeling of 3D and dimension. I'm using a lot of water again to avoid the straight and sharp lines in the watercolor. I want it to be watery and flow, so it looks like it's the real wood. Too much color sometimes. Oops, it got a bit dark, but that will work too, I think. Taking a bit more water and lifting off some color. Watercolor always dries 30% lighter than you paint it, so don't be afraid to give it a lot of color. It won't be as dark as you can see it right now, so no worries. painting the details on the doors, and the next thing I'm going to do is to just give the frame around the door window a little bit more of the dark color. Here you can see the shades on the window. That was why I did color it, but dry it off, so wipe it off. So that's why I'm did put color on, even if I didn't want to have it as brown as on the door. Using a very thin brush to make the log pattern on the wood. I'm not using a ruler, I'm just do them as straight as I can. These houses are handmade, so it won't be totally straight everywhere. And as you can see, I have made some handles too. Just a little dot of black color where the handle for the opening is placed. The last thing I do on the doors and the cabins is to use a pen just to mark where the pattern is and where the log is placed. And I'm making some shadows around the logs so it looks more natural. Here and there, a bit darker on some places and lighter on others. And the same on the doors. This is optional and you don't need to do it, but if you do, use a waterproof pen. So and don't use it before it's totally dry. The next thing is to put some roofs on top of these logs. I have prepared a few different kind of papers. So we are going to put these together. Too big. That's better. I'm inking it, so we get the edges a bit darker to go with the pattern and the color of the logs. As I'm still going for the fantasy houses, I'm using different kind of patterns on the papers. Using up scraps if you have, it's perfect. Both for the roof and the pieces you want for windows and door. I'm backing them with a copy paper, 120 grams, so they will be a bit sturdier. Some of the papers are just thin 80 grams copy paper, so to make them a bit sturdier, as these are going as pockets in the journal, I want them to hold together with the paper on the back. It feels more safe to do it that way. And I will probably sew them later on before I put them into the journal too, just to make them have this feeling of handmade and really good worked on, maybe even some embroidery. But I will wait with that until I going to put them into the journal, so I can see what I need and which details could go with that journal. So I'm deciding to go with a door in the same color from the same paper as the roof on this one, instead of the ones that I have painted, just to get it to stand out a bit. So as you see, even if I have planned to use the door that I have painted, it didn't get so. I choose another way. That's a bit typical me. I need to kind of see and try different things before I decide what to do. Now I'm making a little chimney to put on the roof. And I just realized I had two papers, so I needed to take one of them off. Now that I really already had glued it down, I need to cut the chimney so it goes with the angle of the roof. But if you just have the piece loose, you can just glue the whole piece behind the roof, as I did on the earlier houses I made. There I have a tutorial on those houses too, if you check out my channel. Like that. Then I'm leaving it to dry before I cut them out. And they will be ready for the next step in the decoration. On this little house, I decided to do a little roof window. So I'm just rounding a bit of paper and put it on the roof. Sorry, I moved the camera. I cut this down a little bit so it won't be so big. So then I had to recolor the edges. Putting a bit of distress ink on top of the white so it won't be too white. This time I'm going to use a stamp and do some windows to use on the next little house. use this old paper and gluing it double because it's so thin and old, and then fussy cut out the windows. I had forgot I had this stamp, so thought it could be fun to try to use it on one of the houses. So guys, thank you for watching, and I hope you liked this little tutorial on the log house, and I will be back soon. So until next time, bye bye from Sweden.